Welcome everybody to this eXtension-AUS webinar. eXtension-AUS, for those of you who are not part of it, is a GRDC funded project aiming to bring a national approach to extension using innovative electronic tools for collaboration and delivery. And as part of that, we do offer some training from time to time in electronic tools such as video now and Twitter on other occasions. Today's topic is 1080p in your pocket, making great video on your smartphone. For those of you who are not familiar with the term 1080p, it's basically about screen resolution, the number of pixels, and 1080p is what was known as full high definition. So when you got your flash new telly and it was high definition, that's what 1080p is. And most smartphones now will record in that. Now YouTube is actually offering what they call 4K, which is ridiculously fancy, that nobody realistically can actually distinguish a 4K video anyway, and certainly not for the purposes that we're using it for. So essentially today we're looking at showing you how easy it is to make video on the phone that's in your pocket right now, and to capture great video and to make it possible to share your message with a wider audience. So one of the things that we know from recent research is that 4 times as many consumers would rather watch a video about a product than read about it, which it seems quite excessive to me, but that's obviously things have moved along in this world and people are actually watching things now rather than reading them, and that's just a general level of impatience, I think, in the community now. So one of the things that we know about video is that it's really important for being able to demonstrate something or, show how something works. Often you just can't describe it very well. Often in articles and that sort of thing we'll use photos, but video just works that much easier to make it possible to show what we're doing. And the other thing that we've used it for as the eXtension-AUS project is that it's really handy for being able to get the people who are the experts to share the information that they have. So when people want to hear something from the horse's mouth, the experts can actually speak on their own terms and say how they want to say it. So with the eXtension-AUS Field Crop Diseases and Crop Nutrition YouTube channels, we've now made over 40 videos, and these have had over 2,000 views. And the vast majority of the videos, and all of the ones that you see on your screen on the right there, were all made on a mobile phone. So it's very much possible to do it. So what are we covering in today's webinar? Initially, what is the message that you want to share? What sort of equipment do you need? How do you get the right location? What to remember when doing the filming? And also what to do with the footage at the other end. So first of all, I guess the message. Now, why are you bothering to actually do a video? What's the point? What is the key message that you want to say? And clearly at this point, remember that it's only a short video. Ideally, just keep it simple, not a great scientific paper or a thesis. Just think about what the key take-home message is that you want people to learn or remember. The other part of it is, are you planning something where you're heading out to the field? Do you need to write a script beforehand? Work out what you need to say. And often when people are working out what they want to say in a video, it's really worthwhile to say it out loud to yourself first, or hopefully you might find a willing audience to test it on. Things that, as you write them down on a script, often just don't work when you try to say them out loud or in the situation when you're out in the field. So it's really good to often have a bit of a practice run first, and out loud in a room by yourself if you have to, but just to make sure it actually works. And be prepared to change that script if you have to on the run. The other thing, the one that we've often done with eXtension-AUS is the interviews, and generally we'll follow people up after a conference presentation when the presenter has a topic fresh in their mind, and it's opportunistic and timely to do that. So if you catch somebody straight after their presentation, they've got it over with and they're normally quite relaxed by then and a lot more amenable to doing the interview. Don't leave it to the next day. I've done that, and people have usually moved on and forgotten what their key points were because they're on to doing the next thing. And that actually leads me to my next point of the human attention span. We've now heard that the human attention span is falling behind that of a goldfish, which is a bit of a worry, apparently down to 8 seconds, which is, yes, rather scary. But, there's a lot of talk about the young generation are impatient and they're not interested in going into things properly. They just want it all and they want it now. But realistically, if you think about yourself and how busy you are, and how many times when you're Googling something have you bothered to go to that second screen of results? How many times when you actually get to the article do you read the whole article, or do you just skim it? So everyone these days is under a lot of time pressure. So these videos, they're not gone with the wind. It's just a matter of getting a bit of information across in a timely manner. So as the person who is making the video, you're aiming to try and get about 2 minutes. That's sort of the current benchmark standard for videos, and obviously we do exceed that from time to time. But just bear in mind that to get 2 good minutes, it will take you a lot longer. By the time you set it up, put your person you're working with at ease and actually get them to start speaking, and then decide that they need to rephrase something and start again, it will take a lot longer than 2 minutes to actually do it. I've spent between 15 minutes and an hour on occasions getting that bit of video. Excuse me. So how do we get the 2 minutes that we need? I guess the first thing to think about is that it is actually important to get all the footage that you need. You may not have that person with you tomorrow once you get the footage back. You may not be in the same place. You might be 100 kilometres away from that place, or 500 easily. So, and even if you did go back to the same location, often things have changed. The weather's different, the sunlight's different, the wind's coming from a different direction. If you're out in the paddock, it never quite is the same. So try to record more than you need and get that bit of extra footage, because really the extra cost of getting the extra footage is really only in the time that it takes you to record it and to view it back later. And yeah, it's hard to hide that it's a different piece of footage at times. So sometimes you're just better off trying to get everything beforehand, particularly if you're interviewing people after a conference, because they go back to their location and you go back to yours. That said, certainly I would never record 4 hours, because then you actually have to spend the next 4 hours watching it to decide which bit is worth keeping. And the other thing is, it can be really hard at times to cut stuff out. So try to get enough, but not too much, ideally. Now that where you are, you have missed something, there's usually some tricks and things that you can actually fill it in later. We tend to use things such as inserting photographs or voiceovers or PowerPoint slides with text on them. And there's some simple tricks that you can add in at the last minute if you have missed out on the footage that you needed. But they do add more time to the editing process. So what sort of equipment do you need? Basically, working with your smartphone, you can use just the telephone and you will get some reasonable quality. Normally, make sure you have at the very minimum at least 1 gigabyte free. That will give you about 8 minutes on the phone that I've got, which is iPhone 5. Obviously, if you can have more than that, that's really vital. Because, as I said, I was sometimes recording 3 or 4 videos in one go. So you need to be able to have access to a larger proportion of information. The other one, obviously, is always be charging.
Hang on a second, Catherine. We're seeing Jeff. I'm just seeing Jeff Russell's email screen at the moment. Why is that? Where are you?
I hope he's not emailing somebody who's important.
Not sure, but I'm just putting you back as being the person.
Okay, so I might need to share my screen again, I think. I'll just go back to that. Actually, I can't find the button to press to share my screen. There we are. Okay.
Thank you. Yep, we're back on the equipment screen.
Excellent.
Not sure how that happened.
Okay, so obviously always be charging is the important thing. Make sure you do have a full battery when you do this, or at least greater than 50%. And the other one is to turn on flight mode, and that's really important because it only takes someone to ring you in the middle of a video when you were getting the best footage that you had, and all of a sudden it's all gone. So the tripod that we use is this Joby Grip Tight, and it's really good because it has these gorilla legs that you can wrap it around just about anything. And I have actually attached to the top of a full height camera tripod with that. And the little bit that you can see here is extendable, so it actually fits a range of telephone sizes. So, but there are other products around. It's worth having a bit of a look at what you can get. They're not particularly expensive. I think this one was under $40. The other thing you can do is use a rubber band or some Velcro or something to attach it to things. Or, I mean, I've sat it on top of my knife block at home, and it works really quite well with that. Just poking the end of the phone out that's got the camera. You can record without a tripod or something, often just leaning your body against a wall or your elbows on a table or chair or something. That can work. And one of the other things that we use is just a $10 lapel mic, which helps to improve the ability to get that person's voice. We have tried it with a better lapel mic, a more expensive one, and really it only adds just a little bit of volume. It adds about 2 decibels, so it's not great. The other thing to do is to get the right light for the subject. Natural light is obviously best, and working outside is ideal if it's not in full sun and a lot of glare. If you are inside, ideally have the subject face towards the window. If you're outside, the overcast days are good, or the early morning. Either way, just not having that direct sunlight on people's face, but having enough light so that they're not in the dark. You can tap the screen on the phone to set the exposure to focus on the particular point that you've tapped. The other thing is, clearly, you're not making the Blues Brothers movie. Try to avoid sunglasses, hats, and things that poke up out of John Belushi's head are best avoided. Also look out for reflections and other sorts of troublesome backgrounds. This example, for instance, I thought I had the right spot. I had a bit of shade, a bit of muted sort of light. I had a nice bit of balustrading on a balcony to set the camera up on. What I failed to realise is that that window has a nice reflection of me doing lots of nodding while Alan talks. So it would have been slightly better if I wasn't in the shot, and I was probably lucky there wasn't somebody sitting on the other side of the window waving at me. So setting it up with that lapel mic and everything, one of the things with the mobile phone is that they're highly vulnerable to noise. I've made videos and then found out later that there is a great thumping sort of noise in the background. Really work hard at trying to find somewhere that's a bit quieter, especially if you're at a conference or something. See if you can drag them off into a room down the end of the hall. The lapel mic does help with that. And this one, it's on a 1 metre cord, which means that you can have the phone right up really close. You can see with Andrew there, his face fills the screen. And yeah, the lapel mic is only a 1 metre cable, so I've got the phone closer than 1 metre. I think in this case I might have been closer to about half a metre away from him. And I broke my own rule there because I've got the window behind him, but this was in a room that had windows on 3 sides and the other side was quite messy. So we just put the blinds down and chose the south-facing window to sort of mute the light. Now, how to act when you're actually getting to the filming. Obviously, I've said it before, I'll say it again, put the phone into flight mode. It's one that's easily forgotten, but it can be a bit of a disaster. Make sure that your lens is actually slightly clean before you start. You don't want to get the footage back and find that there's a great big blob of something revolting on across the whole thing. I remember years ago I got my camera photos back when they were old film photos, and there'd been a hair in the camera, so every single photo had a big stripe across it. Now, the other thing you must absolutely do is say no to vertical video. So I'm going to play a short video here, and hopefully the sound comes through all right for everyone.
Video didn't have to look this way. It could have been prevented. Say no to vertical video.
Vertical videos happen when you hold your camera the wrong way. Your video will end up looking like crap.
There are more and more people addicted to making vertical videos every day. It's not cracking them, but it's still really bad. There's two different kinds of people who are addicted to VDS. The first group treats the videos they shoot like pictures. They don't mean any harm. They just don't understand that while you can turn a picture, you can't really turn a video.
The other group is people who don't give a
Vertical video syndrome is dangerous. Motion pictures have always been horizontal. Televisions are horizontal. Computer screens are horizontal. People's eyes are horizontal. We aren't built to watch vertical video.
I love vertical video. Nobody cares about you.
This problem left unchecked. YouTube will begin showing more videos at once. Just like then.
Letterbox vertical videos would be the size of a postage stamp.
And it will spread everywhere. Movie screens have always been political. If vertical videos become accepted, movie theaters will have to be tall and skinny.
No, the movie theaters would have to get torn down and rebuilt. By the time they were rebuilt, Mina Kunitz would be old and ugly.
Where's the specialism in that?
We all get stiff necks from looking up.
No one will sit in the football ever again.
And George Lucas will re-release Star Wars again. The skinny edition.
I was never really able to tell the story that I wanted to. Chance to experiment with technology.
Jerk.
Every time a mobile device is used to record video, the temptation is there. Just say no. Say no, George Lucas. Say no. Say no. Vertical video.
And if you see someone doing it, say, "You're not shooting that right, dummy."
Right. So obviously filming, you know which way to hold the camera now, or the phone. Usually when I'm filming, I do a short test first and then play it back to make sure that I can hear properly. And one of the things to do that with the external microphone, if you plug that in and run the test, you then have to unplug it to hear it play back and plug it back in before you record. Kat, I think you're typing.
Oh, sorry.
So yeah, just be really careful with the external microphones because they can sometimes be halfway in and then they're not actually working properly. The other thing is what they call the B-roll. When you're out getting the footage, particularly in the paddock, it's really useful to take extra still photos or some just generally panning around the paddock type photos. If you're doing up close stuff particularly, you know, close pictures of plants or whatever, it really works much better to use a proper SLR camera or even just a regular compact one rather than a phone, because the still photos, the quality is often just a little bit dodgy and the depth of field not very great. So they work really well for a video of a person or that sort of thing, but they're not so good if you're taking a decent still photograph. The other thing I often ask people for is if they can give me a copy of the PowerPoint that they've presented so that we can actually use some of the slides out of that, and that might be charts or photographs. But I usually, if they're using photographs, I usually try to get the original photograph from them just because it's better quality for inserting. And yeah, just with anything, getting closer to the subject is really important. If you try to zoom footage later on when you're editing the video footage, it really loses its quality. So some of the options, obviously when you go out in the paddock, it can get really windy. and then you often can't record the audio because there's just too much wind in it. Sometimes it's all right, and people will tolerate a little bit of wind if something's in the paddock because they know they're still getting the good information. But if it's no good, just take that B-roll photos, get the close-ups with a better camera, do some general videos, and then if you go back and record the face-to-face interview back in the office, and you can insert the other videos and photos that you've taken out in the field over the top of the voice so that you bring the two together. When we're interviewing, some of the techniques that we use, obviously I do a test record first and I check for the audio to see that it is working and that there's not some awful background noises, and how much racket is there if I'm listening back to the recording. I usually try and stand beside the camera or the phone and ask the person to look at you as the interviewer rather than at the camera. I normally ask people that I'm going to talk. Often they would like you to answer the questions and then they just respond to the questions. If you're doing that, ask them to pause for a moment before they respond, just because a gap makes it much easier to edit the footage. But they generally don't remember that. They're too busy trying to remember their subject and focus on what they want to say. And likewise, I often say, can you sort of include the question in your answer as well, so that if I'm saying, well, what's the issue here, I am hoping that the person will say, the big issue here is. But that will quite often be forgotten too, but it's worth at least trying. Now, obviously, once you've got that all-important footage, the important thing that I always try to do is get it off, or copy off the phone and onto the computer as soon as possible, because mobile phones are highly vulnerable to being dropped, broken, stolen, and all that sort of thing. So getting that footage backed up somewhere as soon as possible is very useful. Usually I try and transfer it from the phone to the computer directly, and then if I need to transfer it to another person, there's a couple of options that I've used, Dropbox or Hightail, which is a large file transfer facility. Both of those allow you to transfer things, but it's much better to do that when you've got Wi-Fi or departmental type internet rather than doing it through the 3G or 4G or whatever, because they're pretty large files. Now, we probably don't really have time to go into the editing here, but the thing with editing is that if you're part of this eXtension-AUS project, certainly the aim would be to get the footage to us and we can edit it down. There's lots of your departments will have the ability to edit footage, but if you want to have a go yourself, iMovie and Windows Movie Maker are both fairly similar and easy to use, and if you're not sure how to use them, use a YouTube video, because there's certainly a lot of good ones out there, and that's how most of us have taught ourselves how to do it. But it's fairly simple to just load the footage in and clip the ends off, cut them up into the pieces that you want. And then the other thing that we do is we drop in the B-roll or the photos or the PowerPoint slides. So just as a bit of an example, this interview with Patrick Stevenson, I recorded 7 minutes of interview, including me asking him the questions. We ended up publishing 4 minutes and 37 seconds, which was a bit longer than ideal, but sometimes it is hard to work out what isn't relevant. Then we added an introductory slide that just gave the eXtension-AUS credentials, his name, the date, the topic, all that sort of information. And the introduction is probably about 6 or 8 seconds, no, probably 4 actually, but the music probably goes for 6 seconds. We use royalty-free music, and when I say royalty-free, it means that you can actually purchase it. You still have to pay, so the word free doesn't refer to the money. But we purchased a track for about $25 to $30 and we got the whole music track. You can purchase them for $5 if you only want the short few seconds at the beginning. And that allows you to use that music for any purpose that you want. So if you're Googling it, search for royalty-free music. So we can put that same bit of music at the start of the track, start of the video, the end of the video, on any other things that we want to do. If we wanted to use it in other situations, it's ours to use. Then we add captions across the bottom that just remind the people of the name and the topic of the presenter. We use images to cover the cuts in the footage, so rather than have the head sort of suddenly leap across the screen, we'll put in an image of the plant with the relevant disease or whatever it is. And we use PowerPoint slides as well, such as in this one we've actually got the pictures that he used in his presentation, and then we have a disclaimer and some music at the end. And I might just, I'm not sure if it's worth bothering to show that, Kat. Is it if I flip it to you to put up? Problem is, if you play it, you can't fast forward it, so we might just skip that, because I was going to fast forward bits of it. But anyway, if you Google eXtension-AUS Patrick Stevenson Septoria, you'll soon find the video and see how we've cut it together with the images and the music and all that sort of thing. So I guess that's basically the end of the webinar, and there's the eXtension-AUS website and our Twitter handles, and look forward to any questions that anyone has.
Oh yes? Where did you purchase the $10 mic?
It's just a Dick Smith job. So you can get them at most places.
I've got a message from Richard saying, great stuff, Catherine.
I've got a question here about how much time I spend on editing. As I say, probably the first video would have taken 2 or 3 days. The last lot I did was actually 5 videos, and they were the same 2 days. They were all edited completely, and with a lot more cutting things in and stuff than I'd done before. And with those, that was when I finally dealt with the music issue that had been bothering me. And the reason that we put music on the front of the videos is just because generally, if you've got silence for the first 4 seconds while the slide's up there saying what the topic is, then people start fiddling with their audio. Whereas if you've got music for those first 4 seconds, then they know that the audio is working.
Yep. No, that's great.
But yeah, now I can probably do a video edit, in half a day or less.
Fantastic.
It's more making the decision on what goes in and what doesn't.
Cool. I've got a couple of questions here for you. I'm not sure if you can see these or if most of them have been sent privately to me. Have you tried any other programs such as Camtasia? Dominique's just asking.
I have actually used Camtasia when I've been using screen capture, and yeah, I find that works quite well as well.
Cool. And Rolf would like to know, did you say you're available to help edit videos?
Yes, well, I sort of am available, but I'm actually only working here for another 3 weeks. But which department is he with?
I'm not sure. I've just got Rolf.
So in the Department of Economic Development, if part of the eXtension-AUS team, there will be people. Yep, yeah. So there will be people. Certainly, there is a group of people. Johanna Couchman would probably be the person I would recommend as asking about these things first of all.
That's great. And Stephen Simpson, Stephen, says, if we record and send, can eXtension-AUS edit and host on our site? And I would imagine that's a yes, isn't it?
Yeah. Basically, yeah, we, at the moment, we have been putting things onto the eXtension-AUS site, and then they can be embedded on anyone else's or, liked or favorited on other YouTube channels. But we've also, DAFWA have published some things, and we have put them into playlists on the eXtension-AUS site, so they can go either way. Probably if we're spending the time editing them, we'd be hoping that we could publish them on ours principally. I'm also seeing a question here about how are we leveraging the production of videos for extension use in Twitter. I'm not quite sure whether you're referring to the fact that you can now tweet video, and we haven't fiddled around with that yet, but one of the things that I had considered that we should do and just haven't got to yet is that we can also, if you make a really short, so you make your video that's a couple of minutes long, then get short excerpts of that and insert them, say, into Facebook. So, up to 30 seconds into Facebook, and a shorter video again, perhaps into Twitter could be useful as a way of promoting what we've already got.
Yep. I've got a question about the editing software. Do we need to download these, or are they standard?
Windows Movie Maker seems to be fairly standard, or whatever. Certainly we've got it on our computer at home, but not on the Dead Jutter one.
Yep.
And I mentioned that means it's going to cost money. Often I do a lot of this stuff at home just because it's easier to get it done at home on your own computer.
Yeah. And what happens if you don't use royalty-free music?
Well, yes, whoever it is who owns the copyright for that may at some stage contact you and insist that it is taken down and charge a fine. Obviously, they have to find you first. Royalty-free music is incredibly cheap. You buy it once and you use it again and again. I think that the $25 US or even $5 US if you just want the intro bit is well worth the money. The other thing with the music is that YouTube does potentially offer you the opportunity to put music automatically onto the videos, but I think that comes with a lot of strings attached, particularly around advertising.
And Johanna's just made a comment that YouTube will also remove some audio automatically.
Yes. So I prefer to control some things. Yeah. It's much better if you do things right in the first place, and then it won't come back to bite you.
Yeah.